Hello and welcome to today's web seminar, Use Intelligent Automation to Increase Software Quality and Business Value, sponsored by Qmetry and featuring Siva Anna, Senior Director of Enterprise QA at InfoStretch. I'm your host and moderator, Josiah Renaudin. Thank you for joining us today. Before I hand it off to the speaker, let me explain the controls on this console. If you experience any technical issues, please send a note through the question field located beneath the panels, and we'll be on hand to help as quickly as possible. Our responses can be read in the Q&A panel to the left of the slides. This is also the same way to submit questions. We welcome all comments and inquiries during today's event, so feel free to ask as many as you'd like, and we'll answer as many as possible during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. This event contains polling questions, which can be answered within the slide view. To optimize your bandwidth for the best viewing experience possible, please be sure to close out any unnecessary applications that may be running in the background. At the bottom of your console is a widget toolbar. These widgets open panels. The console opens with 3 on your screen: the speaker, Q&A, and the slide panels. All of these panels can be moved around and resized to your liking. If you accidentally close one, click the respective widget to reopen the panel. Through these icons, you can download the speaker slides as well as share this event with friends and colleagues. This event is being recorded and made available for on-demand viewing. Once the recording is ready, you'll receive an email with instructions how to access the presentation and slides on demand. With that said, I'd like to introduce and pass controls to our speaker, Siva.
Thank you, Josiah. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me on this very, very exciting topic of intelligent automation. And intelligent test automation is really the next evolution of where automation is headed to. And not only is it right now to kind of embark on this journey, but also the development in intelligent automation itself is seeing so many strides that we can all kind of leverage from its development. So this is me. So I'm a senior director at InfoStretch Corporation, and my role essentially is to help develop automation capabilities at InfoStretch and also help the next generation of automation capabilities, which is intelligent automation. Having said that, let's get going. Now, since we're talking about intelligent automation, really one needs to start with the basis of what intelligence essentially is. So intelligence is the ability to adapt to change, as the late Stephen Hawking said. Now, while this can be applied to many different aspects, for test automation, it really hits home the fact that quality engineering today, or test automation today, demands a level of agility which can only be powered by constantly gathering data, analysis, and reaction to this data. So what's important is not only to kind of keep on getting the intelligence, but also be able to react to it. And both together really is what intelligence automation is all about. In the next few slides, what I'll try to do is elaborate on that and see what tools and processes those would manifest. So no intelligent automation discussion really would be complete without really putting into perspective the main drivers. And digital transformation is essentially one of the main drivers of intelligent automation. Now, digital transformation is a lot about change management of processes, people, technologies, and speed. Now, really, to realize the organizational goals of digital transformation, the main gatekeeper will always be your ability to deliver software faster, and not only faster, but at a very. So at an operational level, it really means some of the things that you see on the screen right now. It really means that how do you manage your backlog of test cases in an optimal manner? How do you execute them with the maximum coverage, but the minimum is required? How do you get the right technologies and tools aligned with your existing DevOps processes to make this happen? And hence, the need for this really necessitates the need for intelligent automation. So we looked at what the main imperative is and what are the real market needs. Now, if you look at it from the market perspective, there are 3 main categories that they're really looking for. They're really interested in increasing coverage and agility. And what that really means from an operation at an operational level essentially is how do you really manage your test cases and how do you really optimize it. They're really looking for improved quality and user experience. And what that essentially would mean is that you have to understand how is the user reacting to your products and are you able to glean information from it and then act upon it. And finally, there is a need to kind of improve the efficiency and time to market. And that essentially would mean to improve your automation infrastructure, improve your test data management, And a lot of these factors essentially would need intelligent automation in. So what the market is really saying is that the normal is not good enough anymore. Now let's kind of go and see where organizations are compared to what the market is requiring. So a lot of organizations in terms of automation are stuck in the dark without a flashlight. And the flashlight that is really needed is really intelligent automation in many different ways. Now, if you look at organizations and what are the main issues with automation today, there is a lot of automation initiatives in play, but a lot of time automation is really for automation's sake. What that really means is that you really have automation converting manual test cases to automation, but without really figuring out what is the best path to do that and in a very strategic manner. And what that really leads to essentially is that you have a lot of data that's lying around, but you're not really gleaning information from that data. What that really also means is that you really are able to kind of manage your different test processes within the automation as and when required, but really you're not able to scale it to the level that you have. And essentially, by putting intelligent automation in play here, you're not only able to gather data along the way, as I mentioned a few slides back, but you're also able to react to it in a very optimum and a timely manner. And let's look at some of the market data around this. Now, the World Quality Report said that there is probably an average of 16% automation happening today. Essentially, that indicates that it is really underutilized in many different ways. Now, as a lot of these companies and some of you probably try to automate, what that really means is that the expectation today is going to be to have intelligent automation baked into the process as we go along. And that is, I think, going to be very important to kind of move forward from where we are to where we're going next. Let's look at some other data. Now, if you look at the ROI from intelligent automation, it's pretty promising because a lot of the ROI is achieved, within the first 6 months, and that is definitely a good return on investment on the investment that is made on that. The real interesting data here is this one from KPMG. KPMG essentially says that the intelligent automation cost savings are really from 40 to 75%. Now, these savings are not just by implementing automation. These savings are really by accumulating data from the automation processes and then reacting to it. And as you can see, that really speaks to the benefit of really leveraging intelligence in your automation process. If you go further down, there's some more data here. Now, this one talks about how does DevOps and intelligent automation kind of play together. It's very interesting to note that DevOps has mandated automation, which in many different ways is kind of needing the data coming back from DevOps again to be used in play. So you have DevOps needing intelligent automation to be in play, and once you have intelligent automation in play, you can really enable DevOps in the same manner. So here, intelligence really becomes the glue to really enable your test automation processes well integrated into your DevOps processes. So data overwhelmingly support the need for intelligent automation. So really now is the time to go ahead with it. So let's look at a quick case study. If you look at this case study that we work with, they had a very standard problem with their automation problem. So they had a lot of test cases that needed to be automated. They're really low on efficiency with the speed and coverage. And you can see that a lot of overhead that needed to be managed. And the typical antidote to this problem is to kind of help them with their automation processes. And you would run kind of the standard automation processes. Now, if you look at their existing automation processes that they had, you would see that a lot of built-in redundancies in the process itself, right? And these redundancies essentially would mean that it will manifest itself into a lot of automation getting done, but a lot of duplicates being run. A lot of automation getting run, but not enough test coverage being covered. You have a lot of test velocity, which basically increased, but you would find that you still have a lot of slack that can be overcome. And of course, the infrastructure cost of maintaining it is not scalable after a point of time. So really, this is a case where we are able to kind of apply automation to solve some of the problems, but essentially there is a lot of optimization that can be done. So down a few slides, I talk about how intelligent automation really solved their problem. to take them from where they are to really into a very, very optimized state. So having said that, I'd be very interested in knowing where you are in your automation journey, right? So have you just started? You're just thinking about it. So if you could take a few seconds just to reply to this, and I'll bring up the results in the next slide really quickly. Okay.
All right, Siva, we're just going to leave it on this slide for a little bit longer. This is where people can start answering the poll questions.
Okay.
Just a reminder again, if you do have any questions for Siva, you can put them in the Q&A box, and we'll be answering those at the end.
So if you look at the data that's coming through, and I see some of you are still kind of responding, it is pretty standard with what we see with a lot of our clients. There's a lot of automation processes already in play, and that is really being worked on. And now customers are really looking to kind of take it to the next level and see how can we really leverage data to kind of make it a much more optimized process. So I'm going to go through the next one here. It's coming in. And this is very typical, as I was just talking about in the previous slide. And even for those who are really thinking about it, it is very pertinent that any automation strategy that you take has to be kept with intelligent automation in mind. So the kind of tools and processes that you choose are the ones that are really built for the future, because that will kind of set you on the right path, essentially. Okay. Thank you for responding. Now that we've gone through the different aspects of what the main drivers for what intelligent automation is, I think the next few slides I want to talk about a little bit about what does really intelligent automation mean, and what are the different processes and tools, etc. Right. So let me go to the next slide. So what is really intelligent automation? Now there are multiple ways to slice and dice it. And if you look at some of the processes here, they would look like very standard automation processes, but there is a very subtle nuance to it why it is intelligent automation. For example, an automation would have the right amount of test coverage and test depth, but intelligent automation would make sure that the test coverage is really optimized to such an extent that you really get economies of scale by doing this optimization. That's where data comes into play. You would find that your automation is kind of baked into your CI/CD process, but in case of intelligent automation, you find that it's not only kind of integrated with your CI/CD process, but you're also able to use the necessary data that comes back from it and feed it back into the process for further learning. Intelligent automation would also mean that a lot of the data that comes from your QA processes are really applied to what we call as cognitive QA to make sure that there are inefficiencies and there are predictions that are given by the automation system which are not very obvious in your regular automation system. So that to us is intelligent test automation, which is really leveraging data and optimizing your existing automation processes. And hence, I mentioned that for those who are really on their way doing automation today, it's a perfect setup to really build intelligent automation on top of it, as long as you choose the right tools as you go ahead in your journey. So any intelligence, and we need to answer some questions, right? So that's why it's really intelligent. Now, if you look at automation per se and see what should it answer, what are the questions should really answer, there could be many. So some of the questions that you would find that really benefits from automation or intelligent automation essentially is, what is my risk of my product, right? What should I be focusing on in terms of my testing? What should be my resource allocation, essentially? What kind of results do I get from my execution? And then how do I optimize the infrastructure around that execution? And the last question is, what should you focus on? What can you eliminate? So intelligent automation, as in any other intelligence, helps you answer what you should not be doing as much as what you should be doing, because what you should not be doing really gives you the biggest savings that we talked about earlier. Right? And the beauty of this all is that you can add your own set of questions and intelligence to it. So a lot of the smarter intelligent automation tools will let you kind of customize the kind of queries, I would say the intelligence you want to gather, and that can be very fine-tuned to your specific requirements. Now, what does intelligent automation look like in terms of tools and processes? This is one view that we like to present. And starting from the top, really, there are different aspects of intelligent automation. You have to think about what is your execution environment, essentially, right? So they have to really be geared to kind of support that and get you the necessary data that you want to feed back in. You have to kind of obviously have a great automated system for managing your automation in a way that is not only reactive, but it is also proactive in trying to find out, your quality of your automation as you get it done. You need to obviously have a good test data management strategy, because a lot of the automation resources are spent on managing test data. So intelligent automation needs to able to allow you to optimize the test data process, not only from an infrastructure perspective, but also from a coverage perspective. You need to be able to have some kind of an acceptance criteria built in, so you know that the effort that you're spending in automation is really getting you the benefits you have, and the quality that you're putting in is really meeting the quality that you mandated when you started the automation process. So some kind of an acceptance criteria which is not only deterministic, but it is also able to look at many different factors, is very, very important. And last but not the least is obviously being able to look at the data that's coming and not only give you a lot of analytics around it, but also be able to give you a lot of prediction to help you figure out how should you fine tune your automation process going forward. And some of these tools, as you see Qmetry here, are tools that Qmetry provides, and I'll talk about it as I go further down. But essentially, this is one way to look at intelligent automation processes. And the reason why this is important is because you may start with one of these areas and then build upon it. Right? So you may not really have to start in a certain process, but it's important to keep all this in mind and be cognizant of it, because the right way to do it is to kind of build all these different pieces together to really get you the most benefit. Now, going back to the case study that we talked about earlier, if you remember, we had automation that was done for this particular customer already had automation done. They had converted the manual test scripts into automation, and they were getting some benefit out of it, but there was a lot of slack which could be covered. So we got an intelligent automation tools to help them really optimize the process. And what does it really look like? So they had benefits like all the duplicates test cases kind of removed from their project, right? So that's a huge benefit, because instead of running probably 100% of your test cases, you could optimize them to run only 60%, get the same amount of coverage. So intelligently, we were able to kind of glean and mine the data and then be able to remove the duplicates, reducing the overheads by 30%. So this is a direct benefit, because as soon as you optimize what you need to automate, you're optimizing how much of automation gets run, and then you basically kind of try to finish all the. Basically, you try to make sure that your overheads are automatically kind of reduced. And finally, in terms of helping them kind of get data from the outside world, from the customers, and figuring out what matters to them most, we're able to bake that into the automation process and take it forward. So let's look at some of the tools and processes for intelligent automation. So at Qmetry, we like to call it the Qmetry's AI-driven engine. Now there are a few aspects of this, and this is an important slide, because as you think about automation, and as you think about how you want to go about your automation process, it is important to remember that there are different aspects of what automation is, intelligent automation is, that needs to be taken care of. For example, looking at deep learning analytics and cluster analysis. Now, the reason we have there is you have a lot of data. When you have a lot of data, you would often ask the question, how do I analyze the data in a way that is not pure analytics, but is also able to kind of apply some ML model to it? Now, going through the process of taking the data and trying to do analytics and trying to do some kind of prediction on it really needs to be subjected to some kind of a machine learning model. And the whole process of doing that itself has to be thought through. You have to kind of think about scale, because you're going to work on a lot of data coming from your system, and it needs to be reactive to the system. It needs to also make sure that as you scale to more different products being automated, you have to make sure your systems are able to kind of keep up with that in terms of data management. You have these pieces here for data science training and machine learning optimization. What we have seen is that you can start a project and with automation, and you try to get some benefit from it. You apply some intelligent automation to it, you get some more benefit to it, and very soon the real benefits are gleaned by optimizing what is really true for your particular situation, right? So, for example, the parameters which are important for your particular organization could be more related to user story qualities and could be more related to, or could be more related to production related bugs. While in some other cases, it's more related to the quality of resources, etc. And that is where a lot of training comes into play. And when you have training to be done, you really have to look at your current environment and try to look at your data and try to figure out what is the core model that really works for you. So given this, and this is important because intelligent automation is kind of I would say a layered process, right? So you need to get the data, analyze the data, clean up the data, then take it forward. And I think keeping this in mind in terms of an AI-driven engine is very important. Now, at Qmetry, we like to look at it in terms of a platform, right? So the way we look at entire digital quality platform is, so this at the base, you have AI-driven digital quality platform. And why it's AI-driven is because you need to have the foundation, which really generates the right amount of data at the right time, are really looking at the right input parameters that need to be processed so that your your downstream processes can react to it well, right? So we have an AI-driven digital quality platform. We look at test management on top of it. And test management essentially is how do you really manage your existing test cases in a very optimal manner. There is test automation that's built on it, which is really the core of your automation process. And on the very top, then you have analytics built on top. Now, if you look at the layer, it is, as I mentioned earlier, it's a layered approach. So you have a platform, you build on it, and then eventually you need to kind of build on top of each of these layers to really get advantage of the next layer. Right? So we look at it as really a platform. Next year. So I'm going to go through the next few slides, just talking about some of the products which really is in our intelligent automation suite of products. I'll start with the Qmetry Automation Studio. So if you remember a couple of slides earlier, I talked about one of the important processes in intelligent automation is really around looking at what is your automation process? How do you author your automation code? How do you kind of manage it, and how do you run it, and how do you get data from that process? Qmetry Automation Studio is one such product which helps you all the way from intelligent authoring all the way to kind of getting data from your execution. Now, intelligent authoring is very important because you could do a lot of downstream intelligence gathering and reaction, but a lot of the issues can be fixed upstream when you're actually doing authoring of code. And if the tool that you're using aids you in that process of authoring it the right way, you get a lot of benefit out of it. And so Qmetry Automation Studio is one such tool which helps you with your authoring process. And it's got three main characters that is mentioned here. Very standard processes that you would follow in automation process using PDD, TDD, but then at the same time adding more intelligence to it so that you can get a lot of benefit as an automation engineer. And then also the maintenance piece of it, right? So a lot of times, as you're all aware, automation code needs to be maintained, and intelligent automation needs to do it almost automatically for you, right? You need to kind of maintain it in a way where it's not as brittle as if we without intelligent automation. And what that really means is to be able to react to changes in a much more proactive manner, and then be able to fix a lot of the automation code, or at least give a lot of the insights for automation engineers to kind of fix it. And then finally, there's a whole slew of dashboards and reports that you need to kind of know how well is everything running. So it needs to run like a well-oiled machine. And Qmetry Automation Studio does provide those kind of reports and dashboards to give you the necessary insights. Next, Qmetry Wisdom. So as the name suggests, Wisdom is all about intelligence. And Wisdom does two different things. So there's one part where it kind of looks at your automation, essentially, and helps figure out how is your automation running? What are the issues that are happening during the automation? How much of infrastructure is being utilized during automation? How can it be optimized? And a lot of the data that comes back to Wisdom, it tries to do a lot of proactive analysis. So there are bots in Wisdom which actually listen to a lot of your automation code, and as soon as it kind of listens to the heartbeat, right? And as soon as it sees an anomaly in the heartbeat, it just tries to characterize that anomaly and basically says, okay, the issue could be with an optimization code, issue could be with the actual automation code, with infrastructure, tries to bring it out for you to react to, and gives you recommendations of how you can react to it. So that's immensely beneficial. And Qmetry Wisdom can take in a lot of standard automation data from your different systems and try to make it all together and give a very comprehensive look on what can be optimized in your automation. The other piece that Wisdom also does is kind of gives you prediction on what you should be doing. So, for example, this is an example of a chart that it brings up and tells you that based on what I've learned about your product and how automation is done and how your product behaves in terms of defects logged, etc. This we predict that this is what your product would look, what your QA results would look like in the future in terms of bug counts and risk, and hence these are the recommendations on what you should be doing to react to it. The recommendation that could give could be around resource allocation, could be around your automation strategy, etc. And so that is the other piece of Wisdom where it tells not only analyzes what's happening, but at the same time it also kind of helps you figure out in the future what really needs to be done. And so that is Wisdom, and as you can see, that is an integral part of any intelligent automation endeavor is to have some kind of a wisdom tool within your portfolio. And then we have test management. Now, test management, although traditionally you may not think of it as important for intelligent automation, but since it's a very upstream process where a lot of time is spent in collating the right tests and managing them together, optimizing your test, in a way that leans itself very well to a DevOps structure with intelligent automation tools built in will give you a lot of benefit, right? So you could have tools where you manage test management, outside, and then try to take all the data and try to bake it into your CI/CD process. Or you could really have tools like Qmetry Test Management, which really lets you manage it in a very, very intelligent manner. It lets you also integrate it well with tools like Jira so that you can have every test case contextual in the context of user stories and epics, etc. Right? So the idea for Qmetry Test Management is not only to give you the vanilla way of managing your test cases, but it also thinks forward and say that what are the needs of intelligent automation in the future, and how do I make sure the right processes are in place today to help you manage that from a test management perspective. And if you remember earlier, I talked about test coverage, how do you manage your test coverage, etc. A lot of the genesis of having the right test coverage, etc., really starts with test management tools and make sure that you can really put in the right markers there so that your test coverage optimization tools can really leverage from it. And Qmetry Test Management as a tool helps you kind of manage that. Okay. Now, having gone through the tools, I think it would be a valid question to maybe check with you. There's any of you are in the way of in the process of doing an automation. You are probably trying to understand intelligent automation more. If you could respond to this poll, and just if anyone is interested in talking, we can definitely help you. Yeah.
All right, Stephen, we can leave this slide up for a bit because we're just about to get into Q&A. So before we do start Q&A, remember you can ask Siva questions by typing them in the field beneath the panels and by clicking the submit button. We'll try to get through as many questions live as possible today, but for those questions we're unable to answer, some will be answered offline. So just let me know when you are good with the results, Siva, and then we can move forward and start the Q&A, or you can close or whatever you're going to do at this point.
Yep, we can move forward with the Q&A.
All right. We'll leave the slide up for just a little bit. Okay. All right. So let's start right over here. So this person wanted to know, can I get Wisdom for evaluation in our environment, and how long does it take to implement?
Sure. So definitely Wisdom can be used for evaluation in your environment. Now, the second part of how long does it take, there are different answers to that question. The first answer is that it can show you the benefits that Wisdom can give you from an automation perspective fairly quickly. But to really get it working in your environment with your specific data, etc., that's something we'll have to look at it from individual case to case basis. But you can see the benefits of it fairly quickly, so that you can get enough data to make decisions fairly quickly on it. But for the specific environment, what we've learned working with a lot of different clients is that it's a very unique situation. But Wisdom is adaptable to manage it, but that really needs to be looked at specifically.
And this is another question that can be hard to answer unless you know the exact person's situation. But this person want to know, in your experience, which open source test tools are best?
Now, if you talk about intelligent automation in per se, now you have the different aspects of it, right? So let's say if you're managing your actual code automation itself, you could use something like QAF, for example, right? The Qmetry Automation Factory framework, which actually helps you to kind of manage your automation in a very intelligent manner. You're now trying to do, for example, some amount of model-based testing for intelligent automation to make sure you have the right models created. There are some open source tools available for that for you doing your MBT. Really, I think the answer to that question is, in a specific scenario that you have, right? If you're trying to optimize, let's say, your test cases, or you're trying to optimize your I would say your runs, you're trying to optimize your analytics, you could use very different tools. For example, you could use the Elk stack, right, to get data from your DevOps and from your automation and build right intelligent dashboards using that. But then if you want to take it to be more predictive, you got to use something more specific like Qmetry Wisdom. So it really depends which part of optimization you want to do, and there are different tools available for doing that.
All right, great. And we're getting a lot of good questions. This is one right here. This person wants to know, do you have any specific advice for automation teams about to justify the cost and effort for introducing artificial intelligence in test automation?
Mm-hmm. And that's a great question, and that's something that we often get from a lot of clients and prospects we talk to. I think the answer there is that it is an investment that you do, and a lot of companies which are either have a well-oiled engine in terms of automation, would definitely benefit from investment in AI-based tools, because the only way to really leverage the data that they have, which are not harnessing today, is to use a lot of the AI-based tools. Right? And the benefit that they get, the ROI that we get, and for example, the numbers as you saw, within 6 months, more than 24% of them really get the ROI, can only be leveraged if you put AI-based tools, because a lot of them you'd find that with analytics, the core analytics, there's only to a certain extent that you can really get benefit out of, right? The other piece is that there are a lot of non-obvious inefficiencies in the system, right? Around test coverage, around test case optimization, around duplication of test cases, etc. And the only way to remove the non-obvious inefficiency is by using AI-based tools. So AI for test automation is beyond the hype cycle, and there are tools that can really give you leverage benefits right now. And the amount of data that's available today, which was not available maybe 5 years back, really makes it very prudent to invest in AI-based tools.
All right, another great one here that's also related. This person wants to know, how long does it take in your experience for an existing team with 10,000 plus automated test cases to start leveraging AI?
Sure. So, starting to leverage AI in a very small manner where you can see some incremental benefits, doesn't take, I would say, a lot of time, because those are, as an example, for example, if we were to work with a particular client on trying to get an AI-based tool into their environment, we would start with a POC, which shows you how the whole integration would work of AI tools in their environment and what the benefits are, right? So you can see some benefits fairly quickly in terms of how it can be leveraged. But really, the core benefit of really for their specific system, for their specific needs, and try to get benefit, that could be a process which could be probably a 3-month process, or even be a 6-month process sometime. And the reason I say that is because a lot of time companies have to also think about AI readiness. That is something we try to preach a lot is, are you AI ready? And we have to get you AI ready to really start leveraging, to really start getting the long-term benefits of the tool. And that process could involve, cleansing your data, managing your data, getting the right parameters in. That could take, maybe 3 months sometimes, or up to 6 months. Now, to get with 10,000 test cases, if you want to, for example, if you want to really see, can I quickly see how I can optimize my test cases and remove duplicates and componentize my test cases, those can be done fairly quickly. We can do a very quick POC to do that, to show you how that benefit is. But that may not be the only thing you're looking for, right? So the long-term answer is going to be longer, but yeah, but we could do quick POCs for sure.
All right, great. Next one here. This person wants to know, with Qmetry automation, what additional framework tools work for testing integration processes and RDP client apps?
So with Qmetry automation, I think the question is more around with Qmetry Automation Studio, right? So Qmetry Automation Studio, you could use Selenium very easily for with Qmetry Automation Studio. That is most widely used, or any other open source tools, for example, right? You could use Cucumber-based test cases that you have that you can manage with that. So fairly, a lot of the open source tools essentially could work with Qmetry Automation Studio. Now the question is more around Wisdom. As I mentioned, Wisdom can take analytics data from a lot of different sources and then give you analytics back again. So it is pretty adaptable in that from that perspective.
All right. Let's ask a few more here. This person wants to know, how do you recommend getting started with intelligent automation in a highly integrated environment with many apps and a high need to maintain data integrity and security? It's a little bit more of a complex one, Siva. That one's 22 if you want to read it again.
Yeah, definitely. I want to read that again. Okay.
Yeah, I'll say that one more time for you. So again, it's how do you recommend getting started with intelligent automation in a highly integrated environment with many apps and a high need to maintain data integrity and security?
Absolutely, and that's a great question, because I think that's a reality for a lot of the listeners on this webinar too. So our recommendation with any intelligent automation project is that you have to first figure out a particular area in your automation ecosystem that you really want to start optimizing it, right? Especially if it's a very integrated environment, a lot of different apps, a lot of different data. Most probably an area that you'll be struggling with today is that you're dealing with a lot of different test cases from a lot of different lines of business, and they're probably written all over the place, and they have all different standards that they follow. A good place to start in that case is, how can I optimize those test cases itself, right? Can I optimize them? Can I clean them up? Can I create a canonical structure? So that will set the stage for really downstream benefits of AI, right? So you have to, that is an example of how we can tackle in a very integrated environment with multiple apps, because there are always the commonalities in your ecosystem that you will find. So you have to pick the commonalities, and those are typically going to be the bottlenecks also in your automation system, and try to optimize those using intelligent automation. And a lot of the tools that I mentioned earlier in the process, they can be used too. A test cases piece of it, or you can just optimize an environment piece of it, and still get a lot of benefit out of it. So it is not an all or none solution, right? So my short answer would be that look at your system, look at the commonalities of where the problems are across the different LOBs that you're looking at, and try to optimize one piece at a time, right? And then build upon it. So for example, one of the clients that we worked with, they are very similar situation. So what we did is we worked with them to pick a Trailblazer project, which said that, okay, this is a great project, which is a high impact project, but not a mission critical project. So perfect candidate for starting an optimization process on. Now the advantage of that is that you could get the benefits of trying something in silo. At the same time, the benefits of those were really visible to all the other projects because they had some kind of dependencies in some form, right? So it's more of someone coming in, looking at your existing ecosystem and helping with some of the evaluation to figure it out. But it's a great question.
All right, great answer too. And this is probably one you hear a lot, but I think it's important. How does intelligent automation help when I'm transitioning from manual testing?
Absolutely. So, and as some of the data earlier in the slides also mentioned, is that obviously you cannot go from manual testing to intelligent automation directly, right? If you try to do that, you're going to fall flat. So, as I mentioned, it's a layered approach. So the first step is obviously you have to be, in that percentage of people who want to really have automated systems in the environment. So you got to start with automation. And when I mentioned AI readiness earlier, what we talk about is that even if you have automation today, or even if you don't have any automation today, we need to help you. We have to help you get automation done with the aim of intelligent automation in the future. So the first step is to get automation in an environment done, because once you get automation in, you have data. That is basically the main ingredient you need for intelligent automation, and then everything kind of falls in line. Now, the important thing is that you don't have to just go, you don't have to just go and do automation for automation's sake, as I mentioned. You have to do it keeping intelligent automation in mind, right? But you absolutely have to start with automation, and then take it forward.
All right, great. And we did mention before in that poll about a consultation meeting. So this person wants to know, what should we expect from the consultation meeting that was in that poll before?
Sure, that's another great question. So the consultation meeting is about understanding your environment, right? And if we want to make sure that you are at a point where you are ready for intelligent automation, or B, you are ready to be ready for intelligent automation, right? What that means is that you could be at a point where you actually have some automation processes running, but the real need there could be to kind of optimize those processes first, keep it in line so that the right data gets created for intelligent automation. Or you have just manual processes, and we can help you and show you the roadmap how to get from where you are to an intelligent automation stage in a fairly reasonable time frame. So consultation meeting is all about assessment to figure out your current state, your needs, and then how does an intelligent automation offering fit into that ecosystem of yours, which is going to always be very unique.
All right, perfect. Let's do just about 2 more questions, then we'll wrap up here. Siva, again, this one will be a little bit more complicated. It's number 28 if you want to read along with me. This person wants to know, does the coverage data collected from the AI lend itself to usage in traditional TCA tools where there may be contractual obligations to prove coverage with the legacy tooling?
So it does, right? So essentially, when you have coverage data from AI tools, so let's say use something like Exawise or use Axe, for example, and then gives you does the right combinatorial analysis and gives you essentially the right amount of data coming back. The data is available in a form that can be consumed by TCA tools in the way you want to analyze it. It may not always be directly integratable with your TCA tool, right? So, but it is in a form that can be consumed, and integration can be built to be analyzed by your TCA tool. And the reason for that essentially is that if you look at data that comes from a lot of combinatorial analysis tools, etc., they give you, given your current situation and your test cases that you have, what kind of what do you want to really do with it, and how do you want to leverage it for your particular scenario, and so it's in a certain format. But then a lot of the characteristics of the data that come in are perfectly the ones that other TCA tools can leverage and use. So the short answer is that it is in a form that can be consumed and used by TCA tools, may not always be readily integratable, so we need to build some kind of a plumbing to do that integration.
All right, great. Again, if you can keep asking questions now, we'll be able to answer some of these offline. You will also get the on-demand version of this later on. So if you missed anything, you can review it. Let's close with this, Siva. This person suggests that artificial intelligence and machine learning in a testing team is a skill set issue. How do you see this skill set issue affecting the reality of intelligent test automation in the future?
Sure, that's another great question. So what short answer is that's where we come in to help with the to help with the skill set issue. But really but really the answer is that we don't want a lot of our clients, etc., to really clients to really bother with understanding the nuances of how a lot of the automation and AI based testing tools work, or even write their own algorithms and machine learning models to make it happen, because that is not a scalable solution. So solutions like Qmetry, Wisdom, and Automation Studio, and our test case optimization tools, etc., are created with models which are generic enough, which can be trained in specific environments and used by customers who may have no skill set whatever, right? And that is why I mentioned earlier that an implementation process could sometimes take 3 to 6 months, not because of a skill set issue, the need from the customer side, is because of understanding the data and the data cleansing piece of it, right? So I would say that if a company is trying to kind of build it all homegrown and try to kind of leverage it, it is definitely a skill set issue, and it is definitely what we have seen is not a scalable model because the effort put in may not be worth it. But if you are really leveraging tools like Qmetry to kind of bring into your ecosystem and use it, it is definitely not a skill set issue because we take the burden from that and try to abstract it enough so that it can be integrated into any ecosystem.
All right, perfect. And that is going to end our event for today. I'd like to thank our speaker, Siva, for his time. And I would like to thank Qmetry for sponsoring this event. Also, a special thank you goes out to you, the audience, for spending the last hour with us. Have a great day. We hope to see you at a future event.